afternoon, as his master was twisting his leg out of pure malice, Epictetus looked at him with absolute, terrifying calm and said, "You are going to break my leg." A second later, the bone snapped. Without a single tear, without a scream of agony, Epictetus simply nodded and concluded, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" He was not practicing a lack of pain. He was demonstrating the ultimate weaponized execution of the dichotomy of control, an elite psychological boundary that separates the fragile human cattle from the mentally untouchable sovereign. Look at the modern landscape around you today. We live in an era where public access to your mind is completely unregulated. We are constantly plugged into an infinite digital grid designed specifically to trigger our reactions, to siphon our attention, and to harvest our emotional volatility. We are conditioned to treat every external event a narcissist's sudden insult, a market crash, a hidden manipulator's passive-aggressive email, or the unpredictable betrayal of an ally as an immediate emergency that requires our emotional vital fluid. But in reality, when you react to things outside your direct perimeter, you are committing voluntary psychological treason. You are surrendering your inner kingdom, handing the keys of your sanity to people who profit off your exhaustion. There is an anomaly group of individuals who refuse to be manipulated by external stimuli. They are the ghosts in the digital machine. They possess the eerie, highly calculated capacity to remain absolutely, clinically unbothered while the entire world around them burns to the ground. They do not fight the chaos, they draw an uncrossable line of absolute control right through it. Fusing the cold, unemotional realism of Machiavellian alignment with the absolute psychological isolation of Stoicism, they treat external reality as a non-player simulation. When a narcissist attempts to bait them into an argument, the trap catches nothing but thin air. When an emergency hits, their heart rate doesn't even accelerate. They do not yell, they do not text back in fury, and they never demand an explanation. They simply manipulate the variables they own and ignore the noise completely, leaving their opponents paralyzed by their lack of data. If you are currently waking up with a stomach tight with anxiety, or if you find your day completely derailed because a small-minded cynic planted a seed of doubt in your brain, you are living as an emotional host to parasites. You have allowed your focus to bleed across the perimeter of your sovereignty. Today, we are shutting down the leaks. We are going to dissect the brutal clinical mechanics of being absolute unbothered, stripped of all soft wellness affirmations and generic toxic positivity fluff. This is the precise psychological blueprint to building an unbreachable shield around your attention, blinding the narcissists who hunt your reactions and operating with a terrifying, calm clarity. To execute this level of cold independence, you must analyze your human relationships with zero sentimentality. The primary illusion that drains your potential is the belief that you have a duty to fix, predict, or control the opinions and actions of others. Your human empathy has been re-engineered by modern society into a hook that allows narcissists and manipulators to drag you into their internal hell. Consider the clinical structure of a narcissistic trap. A hidden manipulator does not attack you with facts, they attack you with manufactured emotional weight. They deliberately drop a cryptic message, display a cold shoulder, or hurl a toxic accusation, knowing your brain will automatically obsess over how to fix it. Because you desperately seek to control how they perceive you, you engage with their reality. You spend hours typing out long, defensive paragraphs. You lose sleep dissecting their underlying motives. In that exact moment, they have won. You have prioritized their external actions over your internal sovereignty. You have consumed your vital psychological currency on an event you cannot alter, leaving your mental tank empty for your actual goals. This realization must hit you like a blast of cold air. Your emotional overreactions are not a sign of a deep soul. They are a sign of unmanaged internal boundaries. Every time you allow someone else's erratic behavior to disrupt your internal pulse, you are stating that their chaos is more real than your stability. The silent achiever understands that the greatest disrespect you can pay to a lesser mind is complete, clinical indifference. They do not look out at the storm trying to calm the waves. They step behind the thick glass walls of their inner laboratory and focus entirely on the calculations that yield concrete, real-world leverage. The initial operational parameter of this mindset is understanding the perimeter of direct sovereignty. Epictetus divided the entire universe into two clean, unyielding categories: the things that are completely up to us and the things that are completely not up to us. The absolute unbothered individual builds a titanium wall precisely along this line. Inside your direct perimeter sit only four assets: your current thoughts, your immediate intentions, your deliberate actions, and your personal management of impulses. That is your entire kingdom. Outside your perimeter sits everything else: the weather, the global economy, your partner's moods, the toxic feedback on a screen, and the unpredictable choices of other human beings. When you allow your mental focus to bleed across this line into the external zone, you enter a state of chronic vulnerability. Niccolo Machiavelli noted that a ruler who relies on variables outside his direct military control is mathematically guaranteed to fall when the wind shifts. The absolute unbothered individual enforces a strict quarantine. When an external crisis strikes, they do not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" They run a cold diagnostic query: does this event fall within my direct execution perimeter? If the calculation yields a 0, the event is immediately scrubbed from their processing engine. They look at the chaos with an expressionless, neutral gaze, classify it as external noise, and return their focus entirely to the data points they actually control. This leads to the execution of the extraction strategy. Manipulators operate through psychological gravity. They pull you into their orbits by creating a false urgency. A covert narcissist will structure an entire narrative where you are labeled the villain, baiting you to cross your perimeter to clear your name. The absolute unbothered mind applies the extraction strategy to completely starve the manipulator of leverage. They realize that trying to defend your character to a bad faith actor is a total waste of cognitive fuel. They decouple their sense of self entirely from the external data feed. If a toxic colleague drops a passive-aggressive threat, the unbothered individual does not enter the arena of argument. They apply clinical observation. They look at the threat not as an emotional injury, but as raw behavioral data. They extract the data, calculate if it poses an actual operational risk to their infrastructure, and if it doesn't, they completely ignore it. They don't hold a grudge. They hold a mirror of complete, flat silence. The manipulator is met with an eerie void that absorbs their malice without echoing anything back, driving their narcissistic anxiety into absolute overload. The next profound protocol is the decoupling of internal reality. Marcus Aurelius stated, "Remove the judgment, and the notion, I am hurt, disappears. Remove I am hurt, and the harm itself vanishes." Most people operate under the false assumption that external events cause their suffering. This is a profound neurological error. An event is just raw, neutral data. It is your internal commentary that translates that data into suffering. The absolute unbothered individual builds a clear delay between information intake and judgment. When a crisis occurs, they do not color the data with adjectives. If they lose an asset or face a betrayal, they do not tell themselves, "This is a disaster, my life is ruined." They translate the data into objective variables. The asset is gone. The alignment is severed. What is the next optimal move within my perimeter? By stripping the situation of all dramatic internal narration, you isolate the problem from your emotional processing engine. You do not give your brain permission to panic. You look at your reality through a high-contrast lens where facts are sharp and emotional interpretations are completely out of focus, while everyone else is burning their energy, screaming at the chessboard. The absolute unbothered player is quietly calculating the 3-move sequence required to completely secure the board. Finally, you must master the quarantine interface. You cannot stop a toxic person from speaking, you cannot stop an algorithm from serving noise, and you cannot stop the weather from changing. The external world is a continuous stream of volatile inputs. The untrained mind allows these inputs to flood directly into their creative center, short-circuiting their discipline. You must install a strict quarantine interface. You treat every incoming message, criticism, or emergency alert as a potentially corrupted file. When an input hits your perimeter, it does not reach your heart or your jawline. It is held in a secure, digital isolation zone inside your consciousness. You analyze the file with absolute detachment. Is this input offering data I can use to optimize my position? If yes, you extract the utility. If no, you hit delete immediately. You do not respond with anger, you do not let it linger in your mind, and you don't discuss it with others. It simply ceases to exist within your operational universe. Your focus remains completely uncompromised, floating above the noise like a satellite orbiting far above a chaotic, storm-ridden planet. The ultimate realization of the dichotomy of control is that your attention is the most valuable sovereign asset you possess. Every single time you allow an external person or event to bother you, you are giving away your power for free. You are allowing a small-minded, envious individual or a chaotic modern algorithm to dictate your mental landscape. That is not living, that is operating as an emotional puppet. The absolute unbothered mind understands that true strength is not the capacity to fight back fiercely, it is the immense, lethal power to remain completely unmoved. They let the world yell, they let the narcissists plot, and they let the shadows scream their loudest threats. They know that an unbothered mind is a psychological black hole that eventually swallows every manipulative trap hurled at it, leaving the attacker completely exposed, exhausted, and hollowed out. They pull the blinds on the external circus, lock the perimeter of their inner laboratory, and apply their focus entirely to the stone, building an empire that speaks for itself. Shut down the entry points. Stop validating the noise of lesser minds by offering them your precious emotional vital fluids. The next time an external storm hits your perimeter, draw the line of control with absolute, cold precision. Look at the chaos. recognize that you do not own it, and remain completely, clinically unbothered. If this transmission has reinforced the walls of your mind and added iron to your internal boundaries, it is time to cement your place in the system. Subscribe to Silent Power Psychology. Leave your silent mark of approval on this file and share these precise strategies strictly with those rare minds who possess the absolute discipline to understand them. Stay disciplined, stay silent, stay untouchable.